This second last part of the Great Game is the history in which America and Russia kept playing with each other's elections. This is the story about which you can easily say that it was started by America, but it was finished by Russian President Putin. Russia completely blew the band of American elections. This true story begins with the Miss Universe competition of November 2013. This competition was taking place on the cool day of November 9 in Crocus Hall in the Russian city of Moscow. In this competition, Venezuela Gabriela Isler, or however her name is pronounced, was selected as Miss Universe. You may not even know her name today, but if we tell you that a very big American celebrity, business tycoon Donald Trump, was also present at this show held in Moscow, then you should feel a little surprised. You should be a little more surprised at the fact that the Miss Universe show was being organized by Donald Trump himself, and he had placed this 2013 Miss Universe event in Moscow with careful planning. The reality was that Donald Trump had not come here for Miss Universe, but for Russian President Vladimir Putin. He wanted good relations with President Putin and wished to expand his business empire in Russia. He had already planned to build his famous tower, Trump Tower, in Moscow, because through it he runs his business empires, and on its top floor he builds his own residence in a penthouse. So these were his plans. These were the days, friends, when Barack Obama was the president, and no one had any idea that a non-political celebrity businessman like Donald Trump could also become the president of the United States. At this show, the young man who was to perform singing and the Russian billionaire who gave $200 million in funding for this show were actually from the same family, the Agalarov family. The Agalarov family is not actually Russian, but they are among those billionaires who do business in partnership with the Russian president. So they, together with Donald Trump, organized the Miss Universe event in Moscow because it benefited both sides. The billionaire R.S. Agalarov was a businessman who used to easily obtain government contracts from President Putin. That is why Donald Trump had partnered with him so that it would be easier to move forward with his projects in Russia. If you think that big events like Miss Universe, Miss Earth, and Miss World are held to search for beauty, then I salute your simplicity. Because in reality, these competitions are part of marketing tactics in which many multinational companies promote their other businesses. Someone is promoting their business in a specific location, while someone gives global fame to a person in order to promote their products through them and make them a brand ambassador. In the same way, thousands of other ventures are also running behind the scenes of such events. So this is not just a beauty competition, but rather a business venture of certain entrepreneurs. That is why there is a lot of dispute over its sites, where it will be held, on which channel it will be shown, who will broadcast it, which advertisements will be shown. All of this involves major competition. Anyway, after the Miss Universe contest, Donald Trump took pictures with Miss Universe and the Aglarova family and signed a letter of intent in which it was agreed to build Trump Tower in Moscow. This was the point from where Donald Trump started continuously praising Russian President Putin. In fact, he had already started these praises when he decided to hold this beauty contest in Moscow. In June 2013, he tweeted, "Do you think President Putin will attend my Miss Universe contest in Moscow? If he does, he will become my new best friend." Even after Miss Universe in Moscow, friends, even after this event, he kept praising Putin and also said that when he was in Moscow, Vladimir Putin had contacted him and he is very nice. During the Miss Universe event, Donald Trump continuously tried to meet Russian President Putin but failed. According to him, Putin had once invited him for a meeting, but due to a traffic jam, the meeting could not happen and he could not reach on time. But Donald Trump did not lose hope. He continued his efforts to build Trump Tower in Moscow and to meet Putin. He wanted to build this tower in Moscow at any cost, but the problem at the time was that American diplomatic relations with Russia had deteriorated. It had become very difficult for America to do business in Russia. These relations worsened when in 2011 in the Russian parliamentary Duma elections, Putin's party, United Russia, won. But the opposition accused the elections of rigging and started protests. Western media and America began supporting these protests. Large rallies of more than 60,000 people began to take place in Russia. Despite the harsh cold, people started coming out on the streets carrying banners and placards. America also began giving statements in support of these protests, and American and European media started rapidly publishing news against Putin, which naturally encouraged the protesters. Russian protesters came out hurling posters calling Putin a thief, a robber, a rat, and many other things. This situation was very troubling for Putin because just 3 months later, presidential elections were to be held in Russia, in which Putin was a candidate. If public opinion had continued like this, he could have lost the election. Because in the recent Duma elections, after which these allegations and protests had occurred, his party had received 15% fewer votes than before. His popularity had declined. He did not consider the allegations of rigging and the opposition's protests as merely a local issue due to American and European support. Rather, he said, and to a large extent correctly, that this was an American conspiracy against him. He blamed it on US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. He said in strong words about the protests against him in Russia that he knew Ms. Clinton had signed her supporters and activists to become active against him. Then friends, Despite the historic movement and protests in March 2012, Vladimir Putin won the Russian presidential election again. He received 60% of the vote, and in Moscow, in front of thousands of people, he gave a speech with tearful eyes and said that he would have won a fair election. But once again, America came to spoil things. Strong concerns were expressed in America and Europe regarding the election. The well-known Western magazine, The Economist, wrote that the world already knew Putin would win, not because he was very popular, but because he had to win, as he had rigged the election and surpassed his opponents. Similarly, the American newspaper The New York Times called the election controversial and wrote that Putin would first have to prove his legitimacy as president. They said that while he was celebrating victory, European observers had delivered him a strong blow. They stated that observers had found clear evidence of fraud in the election. This kind of reporting by American newspapers further angered Putin, who was already upset. Now listen further. You know that Russia considers its neighbor's country, Ukraine, as part of itself? Especially the Putin administration holds this view. So in 2014, the supporter Viktor Yanukovych was the president there. In 2013, some protests began against Viktor in western parts of Ukraine, especially in the western region because he was of Russian origin, while eastern Ukraine, which borders Russia, supported him, and western Ukraine was entirely against him. A movement called the Dignity Movement or Revolution of Dignity started. During these protests, Western media strongly supported Viktor's opponents. The aim of these protests was to remove the pro-Russian president, hold new elections, and try Viktor for treason. Protesters blocked roads. Civil disobedience occurred. Properties were burned. People were killed. And eventually, in February 2014, the movement succeeded. However, during this, 121 people were killed and around 2,000 were injured. Financial losses amounted to billions of dollars. The movement succeeded when an agreement for new election was reached between President Viktor and the protesters. But on the morning of agreement, it was suddenly revealed that the President Viktor had fled the country. He was helped to leave the capital so that a treason case could not be conducted against him. Later, this was tried in his absence, and on June 24, 2019, he was declared guilty of treason and sentenced to 13 months in prison. Obviously, the sentence could not be implemented because he was not in Ukraine, he was in Moscow and remains there. Since President Viktor was of Russian origin and had strong support in eastern Ukraine, Russia supported him. When he was sentenced, President Putin became angry. When the case was ongoing and he was removed, and Western media was supporting it, Putin in 2013 was very angry and called it an American and Western conspiracy. To a large extent, this was true because European media and America were supporting it. Putin accused America of interfering in Ukraine's affairs. As evidence, Russia released an audio recording in which two American diplomats were discussing removing the pro-Russian president Viktor. This angered President Barack Obama, who accused Russia of spying on American diplomats and releasing intercepted conversations online in violation of diplomatic norms. Obama believed this was done on Putin's orders. So France, keeping all this in mind, the protests in 2011, the reactions in 2012, the Ukraine events in 2013, and Crimea and sanctions, you get the background of Putin's mindset by 2014. Now he wanted to settle the score, and the opportunity was the 2016 US presidential election. At such times, countries become politically vulnerable. This was the perfect moment for Putin to strike. The new weapon was social media. Russia used the trolls and hackers to spread misinformation and hack into the systems. In 2015, the FBI warned the Democratic National Committee that their systems were hacked. Russian hackers gained access to Hillary Clinton's campaign data. At the same time, Trump's campaign also had links with people close to Russia, like Paul Manafort and others. Russia had influence in both major US political parties. Trump associate Roger Stone also had links and helped organize the Moscow event. Later, emails revealed that Russia offered damaging information about Hillary Clinton to Trump's team. These emails are public, not conspiracy theories. Trump's team did not report this to US authorities, but instead tried to benefit from it. Meanwhile, Trump publicly promoted patriotism, attacked opponents with insulting nicknames. Russian trolls amplified his content on social media. At the same time, news broke that Russian hackers had accessed Democratic Party data. Democrats hired a firm which produced a dossier alleging Russia had compromising material on Trump. This raised concerns of blackmail. The FBI investigated and later WikiLeaks, through Julian Assange, released leaked information that heavily impacted the election. This was one of the most decisive moments in the election. Who was Julian Assange? What exactly was leaked? What happened next? All of this will be discussed in the next and final part of the series, which we will also show how China, Russia and America are fighting a hidden and ruthless battle for global dominance. Thank you.